week's World Motorsport, where we've a family-sized edition for you over the next 3 hours. We'll kick things off with an all-night at the Nurburgring. It's the international 24 hours. Then we're back to the UK. At Donington Park, the Grand Prix circuit provides the challenge, and for some of them it very much is, for the Formula Parma Audi Championship. We'll have round 3 for you. All of that in National Hour. And for those of you who prefer the off-road vehicles, round 2 of the FIA World Cup. It's all-terrain action from Pordenone. First though, we head off to the Nurburgring.
Hasemi, Japan.
Dennis Cribben, Australia.
Valerio Leone, Italy.
Frédéric de France.
Robert Bishop from England.
It's an incredible spectacle, the 24-hour race at the Nürburgring, and it attracts drivers from all over the world who come to tackle its 73 corners.
It is a long way, but this is probably the most exciting race of its type in the world, and where a sort of normal driver can have an opportunity to race in international company. So it's very exciting. This is my 3rd year here now, and I'm one of the older drivers, but I still get very excited about it. So that's why I come, and I hope I can come again next year.
Well, the event continues to attract an international field, and also joining the fray this year to tackle the whole of the 24 hours, he hopes, is the American Herman Mitch.
It's the greatest sensation in the world. It's absolutely the greatest racetrack in the world. It's known all over the world, and I would say this is the holy grail of racetracks. It's the finest. You know, to race here, it's top, number 1.
Well, not only the Americans, but also many European drivers are also very enthusiastic about the track, whether they come from Luxembourg, Switzerland, Norway, or England. And there's one thing that unites them all: they love the challenge of the Nürburgring.
It's a nice track, so we have been here several years, and now we did a new team and a new car, so we want to do it another time.
Communication is another key point amongst the teams, particularly if they're coming from different countries. But on the track, everybody needs to get on, and it seems that the 24 hours at least, the world of motorsport, revolves around a small castle in a German landscape called Eiffel. For those who like beautiful cars, the 24-hour race at Nürburgring is a paradise. There's actually no car that does not drive here year on year. And one of the eye catchers is the Donkervoort, which we'll have a look at the moment, but we've got cars from Morgan. And here is the Donkervoort. The Donkervoort team from Paderborn in Germany are here for the 3rd time this year. Powered by a 320 brake horsepower, 1.8 litre Audi turbo engine, and you need about €100,000 if you want to drive this car. Now, if you're feeling Euro flushed and you've got about 150,000, you could theoretically buy this gorgeous Corvette, the GT3 of the Red Team. Amazing to drive, this 400 brake horsepower rocket on the Nordschleife. We've also got the Audi NSU TT, not quite as fast as the Corvette, but its 110 brake horsepower makes it possible to drive at a top speed of around about 200 kilometres per hour. The TT does this race for the 2nd and probably the last time. After the race, the car will go into the museum. First made its debut here in 1971. But first of all, the thing that's in most people's mind is not the castle, but to get to the finish line. Now, one of the key teams this year is from Japan. They set off from the land of the rising sun to conquer the Nürburgring. the team of the tyre manufacturer, Falcon. Well, they've been here before. In 1999 they had a 6th place, then a big disappointment in the year 2000, but this time the goal is to achieve that elusive win. This is Takayuki Kinoshita, who says the aim is to win this race. The whole Falcon team has fought for this for 2 years and they've worked very hard in getting the preparation right. So this time, he hopes that great success will be his. But for him, certainly, first place is what counts. Well, nothing is left to chance. Catering, of course, a vitally important ingredient in a 24-hour competition. Apart from that, the team will use around 600 tyres, bringing every kind of compound for every type of condition. Well, we heard from Kinoshita earlier. Let's now hear from Roland Ash, one of the other drivers in the team. Roland thinks it's a great idea when a tyre manufacturer shows such a genuine commitment to an event such as the ADAC International 24 Hours. Says you get the opportunity to test a lot here on the Nurburgring, and for example you can learn how the tyre behaves. The car's also quite close to a production car, although it doesn't look quite like one to me, but thinks that the manufacturer can also gain from the experience over the full 24 hours. Well, the Nissan Skyline GTR 34 has more than 500 brake horsepower. Top cars driven by Scheusman, Ash, Hasimi and Kinoshita. The latter drove to a 3rd place in the 2000 race. So lots of discussions to take place in the Falcon team. Strategy will be key, getting the right tyre choice will also be vitally important. The teams have made their way to the grid, a swarm of people down there. 132,000 spectators are expected over the 24 hours. There's a number of English competitors as well as spectators here, and amongst them is Mark Littlejohn.
There are two things. I think that the circuit itself, there's nothing like the Nordschleife anywhere else in the world. It's the longest and probably the most difficult circuit, so of course that is a challenge. And the other challenge is the 24 hours, the teamwork behind it. It's quite different to a sprint race.
What is your goal for the race?
Well, the goal is to finish, really. Obviously, my first time, it's the most important thing. And hopefully in the future, when I come back again, we can concentrate on doing better. But if we finish in the top 100, it would be great.
Well, we'll talk more about why Mark says the top 100. In fact, there'll be 210 cars that will take the start here on the Nordschleife. A colossal grid, more of that later. But let's now hear from Michael Bartels, who'll be driving the Viper.
Well, first of all, I think it's a characteristic of the circuit, because it's a circuit which you never will find around the world, because going up and down and very fast parts of the track, very slow parts of the track, and for sure all the drivers and all the cars. We have 210 cars on the grid, and then all the things they can happen here. It can be raining at the start and finish line, and can be dry on the other part of the circuit. And these are special circumstances where you have to live with, and it's not easy to deal with it. And I think in the end it will not win only the fastest car, also the team which was clever and disciplined to win the race, and you have to make 24 hours without problems.
Well, the team was spectacular in qualifying, and the Viper starts on pole. And also in the team with Bartels, you remember him, I'm sure, Pedro Lamy.
Finish the race is the main thing. It's very difficult, I think, with the traffic. Try to don't make mistakes. I mean, it's a long race, and we have to try to keep on the road until the end.
Well, Christian Menzel drives last year's winning Porsche, and we wondered what his goal for the race would be.
My goal? Yeah, we won't win. Yeah, that is good. That is a target what we have, and second place is the first loser.
Well, there is the Manthey Porsche with Olaf Manthey, Ulrich Galada and Uli Richter. Jürgen Alten also, they're starting the race from the second row. I'm delighted to say, we heard from him a few moments ago, but joining me here is Mark Littlejohn, which is quite appropriate because, Mark, there is the Nissan Skyline GTR that you actually tested some weeks ago in Japan, we understand. What was that like to drive?
Well, it's quite an awesome car, obviously, with 500 brake horsepower and four-wheel drive. I mean, the four-wheel drive actually is particularly relevant for this race because you often get rain at the Nordschleife, and this could be a distinct advantage for this particular car.
Well, the green flag lap, would you believe, started at 4:45. The race is due to start at 5 p.m. local time. Let's just take a look at the front three rows of the grid. We won't take you through all 210 cars, but you can see the Viper of Zakowski, Bartels and Lamy on the pole position. The Porsche 911 GT3 starting alongside them. And here is the start. And the Viper getting it away. Of course, Mark, in these sorts of conditions, with so many cars on the track, how on earth do you find room to manoeuvre?
Well, it's a miracle, really, how there aren't, all cars aren't off at the first corner, but somehow they get around. You do get a few coming off. People have to be quite sensible with, 210 cars there. It's as simple as that.
Well, a good clean start. The 29th 24-hour race starts here at the Nurburgring. A very good start by the Viper. The Porsche getting there too. And there's one of the other Vipers in the number 34 car. Lots of different machinery as well, Mark. That's the thing that strikes me, that pretty much any car that has been in existence seems to have been eligible for competition here.
Yeah, well, that's the wonderful thing about it. There's such an array of cars. Literally, you've got GT cars at the front, down to things like Caterhams and Minis at the back.
Well, we're well and truly into this race. There is the other of the Manthey Racing Porsches, the number 16 car, a 996 GT3. Spectacular cars. This is only the first group, incidentally. We ride on board now with the Manthey Racing number 3 car, third position at the moment. And here's the second group getting underway. And Mark, you'll be taking a keen eye in this group because your Honda Accord's in there as well.
Yes, we qualified about 88th or something like that, which doesn't sound very good. But of course, with it meant there are about 130 cars or something like that behind us. So we were quite pleased with that.
I think that's a tremendous performance with so many different cars around there. And qualifying around this 20-kilometre circuit must be an interesting proposition as well. We ride with the Porsche, and you can see the sweeps and turns. It really looks as though there's quite a lot of gradient too, Mark.
Yes, it's all hills, basically, blind corners and crests and opposite cambers, yeah.
Well, here's a replay of the start of the race. The traffic there is just horrendous. It's like the M25 on a Monday morning, but of course at racing speeds we're seeing this as a slow motion replay. But just look at the vast array of machinery, even a Jaguar coming through there as well. Well, there is further down one of the other Nissans, and here we are now with our race leaders looking down from the helicopter, and looks like the Porsche, Mark, is lining up for an attack on the Viper for the race lead. Tucking in behind, and goes side by side, and he's through. Tremendous performance there. Lucas Law in the black Porsche moves up and pulls past the Viper. Pedro Lamy has taken the first stint there. And you can see the slower running cars keeping well and truly out of the way. And I would imagine that, hello, what's all this then? Goodness gracious me, madam, put that away. Next week's dirty washing. Catch your death of cold. Oh well, that is the great thing about, yes, there's a very happy cameraman who got the shot. He'll be telling all his friends about that, I'm sure. But let's get back to the race. The 24 hours full of spectacle, not just like that we've seen. But here's the Viper, a replay of the Viper moving up and locking the brakes there into the left-hander, but Pedro Lamy managing to get back past Lucas Law at the wheel of the Porsche. And this Viper looks like a tremendous bit of kit, Mark. Lots of horsepower, lots of grunt.
Yeah, I understand it's about 900 horsepower, something like that. It's incredible when it comes past you. My car had about 212, I think, and you really did have to get out of the way.
Well, a few laps later, we saw the Viper come into the pits. Now, all of the cars must come into the pits, and they undergo what's called a compulsory inspection, where the scrutineers, as we understand it, Mark, are just checking out various components and making sure that the car applies to the rules. Is that about the gist of it?
That's absolutely right. Particularly, they weigh the cars. The cars all have to start with standard weights, and if you're in the area for about 2 minutes, they subtract that time at the end of the race.
Well, of course, we've looking at the highlights here of the 24 hours, condensing this down into a manageable bite-sized piece for you. The Phoenix Porsche that we saw embroiled in the battle also coming in, but this time for a driver change. Now out gets the driver. Emmanuel Collard will take over from Lucas Law, and perhaps in comparison to the Formula 1 pit stops that we see, this one quite a laboured process by comparison. The Viper also in there, and no real sense of urgency.
Yeah, the reason for that is because you have standard fuel pumps. It takes something like 3 or 4 minutes to fill the average car, so there's actually plenty of time to do this, cleaning windscreens and changing tyres.
How much grit and muck are you picking up on the screens there? Does it really hamper vision?
An awful lot. I mean, I was lucky enough to race in dry conditions, which makes it a lot easier, but there's an awful lot of rubber particularly that's thrown up by the 210 cars.
Well, we're watching the Porsche that has taken the lead, the Viper having made its stop. Of course, lots of changes will take place over the course, one of which is that it will get darker. Well, we're not quite into that at the moment, but this is the onboard, the number 44 Porsche, and actually coming up alongside Team Falcon's car, which looks as though it's dropping back actually.
Yeah, this looks like it's going downhill actually. You're going uphill at this section. It's actually quite steep.
And we can hear the engine noise there being brought in, but he seems to be being quite gentle with the power delivery. Perhaps not though.
Yeah, it's a false impression. I think this is quite a fast bit at the back of the circuit, and this is where the more powerful cars really do show their extra speed.
Well, we've jumped forward a few laps here. The Viper has retaken the lead, but closely followed by the Phoenix Motorsport Porsche. You can see the lights are on. A little bit of a kidology going on, I think, there, isn't it, with the Porsche, to suggest that it's coming up amongst fast traffic, but the Viper also deemed that as well. Very, very tight and twisty section here, though, Mark.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is typical of the Nordschleife. What can I say? It's all corners.
73 corners. How do you go about learning the track?
It's very interesting, but in fact you can actually take any car you like during one of their midweek test sessions, and there's a little barrier with a magnetic ticket machine, and you just pay your money and do a lap. It's as simple as that. There's not like an English circuit where you have to actually go through the regulations of having a race license and all the rest of it. You just turn up, anyone can do it.
Well, a change of lead there, the Porsche pulling past the Viper, so they've swapped positions again, and well, I'm sure that the Viper team won't be too worried about that, although it does look to be going a little slower. Underneath the gantry it goes, and again you get a perspective here of just how quick these much faster cars are. The flags flying, the blue flags, to indicate that a faster car is coming up behind a slower car and that you should be aware of what's going on. It has been a feature, hasn't it, Mark, of the previous 24-hour races, that there have been, particularly at night time, incidents involving some of the slower cars where the quick ones, and we see the Viper here just coming in for another pit stop, where the quicker cars just are coming up so quickly on the slower cars that incidents and accidents do occur.
That's absolutely right. What happens, of course, it's not just the fact that it's night, but also the drivers are starting to get a little bit tired. So you've got the combination of night vision problems and tiredness coming into play together. So you really have to exercise extra caution. The race is all about finishing. It's not a sprint race.
Well, as the number 33 car enters the pits, Peter Zakowski will take over from that. While they sort out their pit stop, we'll take one too. Welcome back to the Nordschleife, the Nurburgring, where we're watching a driver change for the Viper team. You've not missed anything while you've been away. There is Peter Zakowski, who is taking over from the wheel of the Viper, and lots of activities. How many sort of tyres would a team expect to go through, Mark, in this sort of a race? We're talking about, obviously, lots of different numbers. We know that the Falcon team have brought something like 600 with them.
Yeah, the Falcon team were running actually 3 cars. I'm not sure that they were intending to get through all 600, but I guess they've got different types of compound to try out, so that's what that's all about. I would have thought the most cars were on something like 30 tyres, something like that.
Well, if you look to the right here, we can see a huge trail of oil that's been left down. The drivers are doing a brilliant job there, being marshalled to the left-hand side of the track to slow down. That won't cause anybody to lose any places. Yellow flags, of course, no overtaking. You can see there how the track here doubles back on itself through that very tight left-hander, and also with some of these corners being banked as well. That must help out. Well, the Porsche continues on its way. Sadly, the track beginning to claim some of its first victims as we were into the first couple of hours. Many cars having problems. Well, would you like to turn it the other way, perhaps?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we talked about tyres. Well, of course, punctures can be picked up either through contact, through something that finds its way onto the circuit, and a real problem there. Well, night was beginning to close in on the Nordschleife. The race officials hanging out the lights on board, and it is certainly something that is very critical. Mark, from your experience of racing in these twilight conditions, and particularly when darkness falls, it must be a difficult thing to adjust to the light changing.
Well, I have to speak from personal experience, and I was particularly concerned about what the night driving would be like. I actually only got a few laps in the dark, but it wasn't something that worried me, and I felt quite comfortable with it. In fact, in a funny sort of way, there's less to concentrate about. You know, you've just got lights and the circuit. That's really all you can see. There's less to distract you.
Well, still Peter Daszkowski leads this race in the Viper GTSR, but we're riding on board now with this spectacular Porsche. The fans have got the fires going. There'll be a few barbecues, in fact smoke billowing up into the air as well from the barbecues, and I suppose a few cold drinks will be downed as well during the course of the night time. But it is very much a carnival atmosphere and almost a festival of motorsport, with so much to see and do both in the race and away. And you can literally come away from the race and then rejoin it later on. Well, there's been an incident out on track. Just look at this. The Porsche, just as we were saying before, a couple of the Porsches getting into a tangle here. That's Christian Menzel in the number 1 car driving into the back of the Manthey Porsche, and you can see the Manthey Porsche leaving the track. Well, back in the pits, Team Kleines Arschloch. Well, I know from my O-level German that Kleines means little. Well, it is the Mini. I'm not sure what Arschloch is, but maybe your German is better than mine. They've been in for the pit stop. And again, just how quick. Are you aware, Mark, of the speed on which those cars come up behind you?
Yeah, you try and judge it. You're looking in your mirror and you see some lights. You think, is this one coming up really quick or just a little bit quick? And you hope you're right.
Well, you can see the Porsche absolutely flying. There is the GT.
It's a GTR 34, I think, isn't it? That one.
And about to be passed, I think. When you drove this car, what were the things that surprised you about it? The GT. I'm talking about the Skyline.
Well, actually, the steering was a little heavier than some racing cars I've driven of that sort of power performance. It's because of the four-wheel drive system and the general weight of the car. So it's probably quite a tiring drive for 24 hours.
Oh, disappointment there for the VW Golf kit car. That's the number 107 car of Klaus-Peter Thaler, former cycling world champion, switching to 4 wheels, but it doesn't look as though that car's going any further. And so that'll be disappointment for them. Well, up overhead, we're watching the progress of our race leader. And again, coming up behind the slower car, worming his way through the tight twists and turns of the Nordschleife. 73 different corners. And a huge amount of information to take in. But as we heard from Mark Littlejohn alongside me here, you can actually get, from what you were saying, Mark, quite used to it. We see also the yellow lights that are in use here. You may know from experience of previous 24-hour races that at night time, of course, you cannot see the yellow flags being waved. So a lighting system is in operation, and that helps people to see. Well, we've had an incident out on the track. You can see the tyre marks there, and the cars are being shepherded around that. Hopefully nobody injured down there. And you can see everybody paying attention and doing the decent thing and getting themselves out of the way. The Porsche makes its way through the scene of the accident, but will continue And with 210 cars, I can tell you we've lost quite a number now, but everyone continuing to try and get the cars back out there. And even with major problems, we see all sorts of teams rebuilding engines, changing gearboxes. And shortly after we were watching the Porsche here, news coming through that the Falcon team had got a problem. And it was indeed an engine problem, a disaster for the number 44 Nissan Skyline GTR 34 team. But we talked to the European General Manager of the team, Isami Ishida, who remains optimistic.
That unfortunately engine broke out, and I don't know how long does it take to replace the engine, but anyway we come back to the race.
Well, nightfall well and truly upon us now. You can see the castle there, glorious part of the world we're in here, very picturesque, but the lights from the cars you can see spanning out over the 20 kilometres. Well, there's been some developments in the leading top 10. The Opel Astra has moved up into the top 10, and we talked to Volker Strejček.
The Opel Astra is running very, very well, and now we are more or less on the same position. We are in the pace. That means we are the first 2-liter car behind of a lot of Porsches and Vipers, and that means, yeah, the car is more than good, and it makes really fun to drive it.
Well, Volker seems very happy with his performance. We've 4 hours completed of the 24-hour International Nurburgring race. The Porsche in front behind the Viper, and in third position, the second of the Vipers with Markus Grossmann, Frank Stippler, Franz Fabian and Timo Kluck. Well, nighttime is always a very special place for any 24-hour race, and here's a chance to savour some of the atmosphere. Well, we're now jumping forward to 14 hours of the race complete, and there's the position. The Porsche of Menzel, Löhr and Collard and Abt up into first position. A great performance by them. You can see their positions through to 12th spot. Unfortunately, the second of the Phoenix Motorsport Porsches had lost lots of laps and dropped back.
In the night we have a little accident. My teammate had a little accident with another car, and so we have lost water. We leave water from the cooler, and the engine was too hot.
So problems then for the Phoenix Motorsport team, but the good news for them by comparison is that the number one car was still out front. Now, on the other scale of the emotional stress level, sadly the Mark Littlejohn car retired during the night, and Mark has rejoined me here. Mark, tell us what happened to the car and the team.
Well, we had a drive shaft failure at a corner just before, well, a corner called Klostertal, and we thought we could probably fix it. The mechanics worked very hard at the side of the circuit and spent about 2 or 3 hours doing that. But as soon as they tried to turn the engine on, it was we realised it was a buzzed engine, and that was the end of the race for us, unfortunately.
Oh, it's great disappointment. We're just watching here a terrific battle between two of the Porsches. The Manthey Porsche number 3 moving on through, and talking of Porsches, there is the Porsche of Edgar Doran coming under attack from the Viper, and the Viper looking as though it's sizing itself up for a manoeuvre, Mark. He'll presumably just bide his time and wait for the right opportunity.
Yeah, that's a very, very hairy part of the circuit there. We're just coming into a corner called Schwedenkreuz, and there's a little hump just about there somewhere where the car tries to throw itself into the barrier.
Well, you don't want to be doing that, do you, in the 24-hour race? Well, still on the charge is the Phoenix Motorsport Porsche, the black Porsche here, making good progress. I have to say, they look as though they're running at sort of almost Grand Prix pace rather than 24-hour pace. Well, we're riding again through the section known as Carousel. Have I pronounced that right, Mark?
Carousel, I think it's pronounced.
Ah, it's the German writing here. So the number 3 out there, and this is the 993 GT2 car of Imgat's Klaus, Stabler and Rice. Not sure what that fluttering rubber band is on the front, but more of that in a little while. Well, 16 hours completed. The Viper had completed 98 laps, a 48-second advantage over the Porsche. And there you can see the rest of the positions running down to 12th place with the Honda S2000. Just demonstrating again the huge variety of cars, but the M3s, the Porsches in particular, seeming to dominate, Mark. And the Porsche, pretty much a bomb-proof car and always gone well here at the 24-hour race.
Yeah, well, Porsches are designed to race for 24 hours at this circuit. This is where they test them actually half the time. So, you know, that's the car to have.
Well, you can see here problems for the number 2 Phoenix Porsche, Bernhard Abt von Gartzen and Saumer, and that broke down during the night. They tried to get it back on the track, but it was losing water from the radiator, and that caused their retirement. Well, meanwhile, the Viper, the number 33 Viper of Lamy, was ploughing through the field, had built up, as we saw, a 48-second lead. That had been cut back a little bit some laps later to 44 seconds by the Phoenix Porsche. Now, talking of the Phoenix Porsche, news that they were about to come in for another of their pit stops. Christian Menzel, Lucas Löhr and Emmanuel Collard, of course, the triumvirate who are racing in that particular car. And we see the mechanics looking underneath the car, Mark, and they're also checking not just the tyres but all sorts of other components there as well.
Yeah, generally the cars have to be checked as thoroughly as possible when they come in, because they do take quite a pounding, obviously, between stints, which generally about an hour and a half.
I notice also that we've seen a lot of brakes and discs changed as well. Is it particularly hard on brakes here at the Nurburgring?
Yeah, very hard on brakes, and obviously the heavier cars suffer more than others.
Well, we see there the Golf TDI, the diesel number 306, with its right rear tyre and wheel. It's a very jaunty angle. I don't think that's going to get much further, but again, it's the spirit of the 24 hours that everybody tries to get back to the pits to get the car repaired.
Yeah, it's a long way round if it happens to happen just as you pass the end of the pit road, of course.
What a nightmare. 20 kilometres, a long, long way, as you say. Well, the Phoenix Porsche was now pursuing Olaf Manthe's Porsche, the number 3 car. Well, that had got into braking difficulties and the rear of the car and started to drop back. This is the number 25 Porsche that we just caught a glimpse of there. One of the drivers in that, the V8 star driver Kurt Thiem. Well, when you've been up all night, you need to take a rest somewhere, don't you? She's missing all the action, though. And that action involves the Phoenix Motorsport Porsche here passing the Manthe Porsche. You can hear right up on the top of the rev range, and there are some very long straights here, Mark. That surely is a punishment to the engine.
Yeah, that is the one. That's probably in that car approaching, I don't know, 190 miles an hour, something like that. It's flat. I know I was doing over 150 there in my Honda.
Well, it's terrific speed, isn't it? And must require great concentration. Well, here is the Viper, the race leader, in for its regular pit stop. Pedro Lamy there, ready to take over from Eric Zakowski, who's been doing the last stint in that car. Again, a fairly leisurely pit stop, because as Mark was saying earlier on, the fuel takes a little bit of time to get into the tank. Well, while they complete their stop, we'll take one too. Join us after the break. Welcome back to the Nurburgring. We're on the Nordschleife. It's 20 kilometres per lap, would you believe? And they're lapping at around about an average of 9 minutes. Some are going a little bit quicker, others are going a lot slower, because we've got a huge variety of cars in this particular event. Alongside me is Mark Littlejohn, whose Honda Accord team has sadly had to retire from the event. But Mark, the Porsche looking very strong.
Yeah, Porsche, as I said before, it's the car to have. That's the one I'd like to race next year if there was any chance. I'm
sure you'll manufacture an opportunity to do that. And if there's a seat alongside you, I might just join you. Well, the Viper and the Porsche have been fighting it out for the last 17 and a half or so hours. The Viper looking very solid, you have to say. Not looking as solid as one of the Porsches, and this the Manthate Porsche. Lost a wheel. You can see the left rear is missing there. Technical problems were reliably informed. It looks a bit more technical than just a technical problem. I suppose 3 wheels on your wagon is enough of a problem. Great difficulties in the Kissling pits as well. The Astra that we heard from earlier on having all sorts of drama. The Opel Sports Chief Volker Strycek has been concerned about that. They crept up into the top 10, and we understand that they now have a clutch problem which perhaps isn't easily solvable.
We were position 9 in overall. That is unbelievable with this kind of car. We were in the middle of the Porsches. That is more than good. But we have now a clutch problem, and we have to change the clutch. And we will change together the gearbox. We are not sure is it only the clutch or is it both together. But we will repair the car and we go in the race as soon as possible. And we will do the final. And we have a lot of time to bring up the car in a good position.
Well, disappointment for Volker Strycek, and Mark, the mechanics there working furiously. There seems to be a great sort of camaraderie and spirit amongst many of the teams.
Yeah, it's all about teamwork, and every team understands what the others are all going through. So, you know, it's a great atmosphere.
And these guys seem to work horrendous hours to make sure that these cars are back out on the track.
They do. They just go for it. You know, all they want to do is for the cars to finish, and their heart is in it just as much as the drivers is.
Well, as you say, great team spirit, and we're watching now the Porsche still pursuing the Viper. The Viper continues to lead. The car looks to go very light there, Mark, as you come over that crest, and we get a good idea of the uphill section.
Yeah,
there.
This bit here is called Flugplatz, which literally translated means flying place, and you can see why.
Well, in every form of motorsport you get the occasional idiot, and a couple of them deciding that they would venture out across the track. Not the best thing to do. I'm sure it distracted the Porsches, but fortunately the marshals did their job and sorted out that particular problem. Well, back with the Zakspeed Viper continuing to lead this race. It's completed now 115 laps, and it seems that the Viper is able to overtake the slower running cars with consummate ease, although I have to say they're getting an awful lot of help by everybody being very aware, Mark, of what's going out there on the track.
Yeah, you have to remember that, you know, most of these guys actually have done a fair bit of motorsport before, so they generally know what they're doing and are looking in their mirrors. They want to finish too.
Well, we're getting reports of a bit of drama for the Phoenix Motorsport team. In fact, here we are on the pitch. You can see the head of the team there, Thomas Hanarici, and driver Lucas Law can hardly hold back their tears. Their Porsche was in second position out on the track, and well, as you can see, the body language not good. Let's hear from Thomas.
We changed the drivers, and in the next lap, we have an accident in Hatzenbach. A car was side on our car, and then the crash, and we have big problems with our car. It's not running in this time, and so we finished this race now.
Well, you can see why they've finished this race as well. When you take a walk around the Porsche, the front left, that doesn't look in good condition to me, Mark.
Yeah, it looks pretty unpleasant, doesn't it? It's actually can all be sorted out, I think, in due course.
It was a normal situation here in a 24-hour race. It was a slow car on the left side, and he opened the door, gave me and my car, my partner in front, the possibility to pass. And yeah, my partner in front, he passed the car, and another car, he didn't saw me, and suddenly he closed my way, and I touched with my wheels with another car, the wheel, and then was from the suspension a part was broken, and I had not the possibility to steer, and that was the end.
Well, disappointment. The title holders out, and you can see the reason why. Let's just take a look then at the positions after 20 hours. The Viper, 121 laps completed, a 6-lap advantage now over the Porsche 911 GT3, and the field running through there down to 12th position. Well, we're back with our race leader, the Zakspeed Viper, the number 33 car, as we said, with a 6-lap advantage, I should say. It is going through Dunlop. And you have to say they've put together a very strong running team, and this car previously has had some problems, but looking very strong here this weekend.
Yeah, and you must realise, you know, a 6-lap lead doesn't sound very much, but a 6 lap, that's nearly an hour. You know, it's a huge lead.
Well, a colossal lead, yeah, as you say, the lapping around about 9 minutes a lap, and the Viper just continued to chalk up lap after lap after lap, and looking, as we said, very, very strong there. Pit strategy's been good. They've managed to work their way through the traffic without too many problems. You can see there, passing the BMW and the Audi. And talking of problems, well, one problem that has been solved. A good news story for a change. The Manthey Porsche, the number 3 car, back out on the track. Tireless work by the team there in the pits to repair that car. You can see it's missing some of its rear bodywork, but is making good, steady progress. And again, this glorious countryside, Mark, must be fabulous to drive through.
It is. It's a lovely area, the Eifel region. I thoroughly recommend it for a holiday.
Well, you won't be driving on these roads at these sorts of speeds, I would suspect.
No, hopefully not.
Well, the Viper, again, just very, very solid, very, very strong. Pedro Lamy, Peter Zakowski, all putting in good stints in the Viper. And it really is absolutely flying here at the moment, just racking up those very quick laps indeed. Now behind the Viper, up into 3rd place, something of a surprise for some, the BMW M346, the number 46 car of Michael Tischner, Wilfried Thal, Lothar Meinetze-Hagen and Matthias Tischner. Well, they continue on their way. That's a great performance by them. But again, another pit stop for the number 33 car, where Pedro Lamy will hand over to Michael Bartels. Very strong team and very much an experienced bunch of drivers, Mark.
Yeah, they are. You know, there's no substitute for experience at this race.
So how did you go about getting together your drive for this fabulous race?
Oh, begging, bribing, and, you know, I don't know. I just knew last year when I came to watch it that I had to race this year, so, you know, I was on a mission.
What sort of budgets are we talking about that drivers need? I suppose, presumably, it does depend on the type of car you're driving.
It's hugely, you know, it's a huge difference between the front and the back, it really is. But if you're a reasonably experienced club driver with an international license, you can get a driver between £5,000, £8,000, that sort of figure.
Which is very good value, it would seem. Well, looking here at one of the other British drivers, here's a replay of what happened to the Vauxhall Astra. And the outside mirror, just watch that, it gets ripped off, and that's as a result of this contact with the barrier. A fairly hard hit there, but fortunately not too much damage done. And the 220 car will continue on its way. Well, we're back here with the Manthey Porsche, trying to claw its way back up into the top 10. Of course, one of the difficulties is if you've spent a lot of time in the pit lane, then you have a lot of work to do when you get out there. And presumably you just hope that others will also have all sorts of problems and issues to deal with.
Yeah, most do. Oh, this is interesting, isn't it?
Well, happy times.
Germanic theme, not.
Well, the Scotsman there enjoying his visit to the Nurburgring. A smile on the face of Roland Ash indicates that the Falcon Nissan, with its 500 brake horsepower, is ready to continue the race. They've been working on that car for literally hours, Mark, and it looks like they're going to get back out there. Let's just catch up and get a view from Isamu Ishida, the general manager from Falcon Tyres, who we can hear from now in the pit lane.
I'm very happy now because last night our crews, our staff works very hard and we could come back the race.
Well, that's good news for them. Second position now, the number 25 Porsche of Gerhard Müller and Gerhard Mansberg, Wolf Sylvester at the wheel of the car, and Kurt Thiem. Now, just 8 laps behind the Viper, but it is 2 laps off, 2 laps ahead of its nearest pursuer. So a very healthy cushion there, Mark. As you were saying, the laps are very long, so a 2-lap advantage for them over their hottest pursuer is a healthy advantage.
Yeah, that's reasonably comfortable, but there's still a bit of the race left, so they've got to keep going.
Yeah, we're into the final 3 hours now of this ADAC International 24-hour, and I'll tell you what, it never rains, it pours. The stop and go penalty has been handed out to the number 16 car. They're down in 144th place, but remember, 210 cars started this race. Now the Nissan GTR, the Skyline, ploughing through the field, it really can demonstrate its power. And you would have to think, Mark, that this, with a fair wind, would have been a car that could certainly challenge for podium honours, if not a win.
Yeah, that's what Falcon were aiming for, and the car is certainly capable of it, particularly if it had the normal customary wet weather.
Well, it's certainly flying at the moment, and whatever changes they've been able to make to that car seems to have worked very well indeed. And We've seen how Roland Ash has been able to put in some very quick and competitive lap times, but still not competitive enough to close in on our race leader, who continues to be the Viper. There is the number 33 Viper, proved to be, well, I hope I'm not putting the mockers on it here, but it's certainly proven to be an excellent and reliable car for this long distance, but still some way to go. And as we were saying, there's always problems that can beset cars in the final and closing stages. Lights ablaze there. Well, let's now catch up in the pit lane with one of the drivers of this car, Eric Sakowski.
Now the Porsche is out, we have a little bit easier, but we have to run to the checkered flag. That means at 5 o'clock we have to be the first on this flag.
Well, Eric hoping to be first to the checkered flag. You'd have to think now, Mark, that the only thing that might beset the Viper is an accident with a slower running car. There's a car that's been in the wars, but everybody wants this checkered flag, don't they?
Yeah, that's what it's all about, finishing.
There's a tremendous effort that everybody puts in. Well, for the Viper, it's just a question now of keeping itself on the track. There's no one really who is close to the Viper. It's got a colossal advantage. Interestingly, though, there are a number of cars that are still out there. One of them is the Mercedes 500 SLC, the Derek's Rennwagen team, actually occupying position 100.
Yeah, that car was, I have to say, was a bit of a mobile chicane at times. There were a couple of times I passed that one.
Well, it looks like he's out for a fairly sedentary drive. This is that glorious car we looked at earlier on, the Donkervoort, the D8 180R of the Donkervoort team. Also out there, the Morgan Plus 8 of the Scuderia Colonia. That's lying in around about the 130th place at the moment. You can see the suspension working away on these cars. It seems to be a very soft setup.
It looks it, doesn't it?
Is that how you set up your car? Do you go for that soft option? Is the track very, very bumpy?
Well, it is very bumpy, yeah. And you know, you don't want to get too tired driving these cars, so you don't want it too hard. You're quite right.
Well, the Viper pulling past the Nissan Skyline. Although the Skyline, you have to say, is once the Viper has got past there, shown that it can maintain a reasonable pace with the Viper. And but for those mechanical dramas, you would have hoped that they've put in a better performance, really.
Yes, I think they could have done it. They really could have done it. And obviously next year they'll be. Yes, that looks very unhealthy, doesn't it?
That looks as though it's a bit of sticky tape.
You're not going to get much luggage in that after the race, are you?
I should think not, no. That'll be going back to the repair as well. We're riding on board with the number 3 Manthey Porsche here. And you can see the badly demolished BMW in front of it, but everybody wants to stay out there. We've said that so many times. Here's the Viper again, still ahead of the Nissan Skyline.
Is he going to do it?
Well, into the closing stages now. It's really just a matter of nursing the car round. You can see, looking here through the windscreen of the Falcon team's Nissan, sparks flying there from the back of the Viper. Well, preparations being made for the finish. It's been a long, by definition, 24 hours. Racing is a long time, but it seems longer in a way, doesn't it, Mark? The actual, all of the dramas, the highs and lows. There you go, there's one use for a yellow flag. Marshall just getting ready, I think, for the checkered flag, which we're not too far away from now. Just about half an hour to go. The GM Sport Racing team, number 25 car, starting to sense that really only a big accident or a crash could endanger their second place. They've got back into the race, held their position very nicely indeed. But it's the Viper that is on course. Just one objective in front of them, which now seems to be within reaching distance. They look though like, Mark, they might try and attempt a lap record here at the end, putting in some quick times at the end of the race and realising that perhaps the car looks like it will hold up quite nicely.
Yeah, it's a bit risky, I would have thought, to go for that record, but
that's a strategy they're opting for. And look at this disaster again for the Falcon team. A damaged tyre on the front left corner. Well, that's something that can be changed, so they'll certainly take the checkered flag across the finish line. And here you can see the speeds of the Viper. Also problems there for the AC München team's car. Claims victims right till the end. That looked very unhealthy to me. Well, they'll try and see. Well, looking at all that's not water. I can see that from there. 144 laps completed then into the closing stages. The Viper going through the last few kilometres. And the crowd that's here, a very healthy crowd, I say, a good turnout, and the weather conditions have been quite reasonable to us as well. The Viper, though, looks set. There are the spectators waving as the Viper looks to be on what must surely be, Mark, its last lap now.
Yeah, looks like it, doesn't it?
Well, coming into the closing stages, everybody acknowledging the procession of cars. The Viper will bring them all round. The marshals waving. It's been a terrific performance, this, by the Viper team. Pedro Lamy is at the wheel of the car. And a deafening chorus here at the start-finish line as the checkered flag goes out. Eric Zakowski there as well, Michael Bartels. And lots of embracing and hugging going on the pit lane. They're absolutely thrilled with that. A tremendous performance by the Viper team. The Zakspeed team have put in hours of preparation there. There they are on the pit wall, Michael Bartels and Eric Zakowski, very happy indeed. Great performance by them. And the Porsche Sport Racing number 25 will take second place. It's also a terrific run from them. Let's get confirmation then of the result of the Nürburgring's 24-hour race. The Viper takes the victory ahead of the GT Porsche, the BMW M3. Good performance by them, taking that third place for the Tischner brothers. They'll be absolutely thrilled with that. And you can see there are the results of the top 12. Well, it's been a fantastic performance by the Viper team, Mark, and perhaps after the ceremony we can hear now from Michael Bartels.
Well, for sure it's a goal for 2002 now, and I won now twice in a row, and we're gonna try again next year maybe to make the triple.
Well, congratulations to them. My thanks to Mark Littlejohn for joining me. Mark, been a great event.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it myself, even though I didn't finish, but I'll be back next year.
Well, good for you. We'll now take a short break.